Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gooey's Dungeon Dive, the podcast where I, Gooey, rank all of the dungeons in the Legend of Zelda series, and in our continuing linked game of Oracle of Ages, we get a chance to rescue Princess Zelda from the Vire from Oracle of Seasons, actually, by playing a little game of Donkey Kong? Zelda and Impa head back to Nehru's home and send us on our way towards our next destination. After rescuing and teaming up with another animal pal to find some layabout carpenters, a bridge is constructed that allows us to reach Symmetry Village, a completely symmetrical town. Trouble is brewing here as their mystical palindromic Toonie Nut has been shattered by Varen, causing a volcano in town to go haywire, and in the present day, turning it into a charred hellscape. Taking the Toonie Nut, we have to travel about the region, and we even learn a new time-traveling harp song from Toki, the composer. This allows us to travel to the present from the past, no matter where we are, which greatly increases our overworld puzzling between time periods. Eventually, we bring the Toonie Nut to the restoration wall and meet Patch, who has us conduct a very strange ritual to restore the nut. When we return it to Symmetry Village, we restore the balance, and that allows Symmetry City to thrive in the present time and gives us access to the next dungeon, Skull Dungeon. And guess what? Skull Dungeon is shaped like a skull. Did I blow your gourd or what? And it's pretty sweet because shaping dungeons like a skull is a time-honored tradition. It's even fairly ominous with all its lava, skull enemies, and a theme that kind of fits in like a Castlevania sort of setting. The navigation of this dungeon is completely linear, opting for more challenge-based rooms, and I think it's pretty fun. You've got some straight-up puzzle-based rooms that reuse the color-based themes from previous dungeons, as well as some item-based rooms like ricocheting shots with the seed shooter. There's a nice sense of action with jumping over lava pits, as well as pulling these levers to allow for a quick passage over some lava-filled rooms before they fill back up. There's some minecart riding that, much like the dungeon, isn't very complicated, but it is fun to weave back and forth through parts of the dungeon. Similar to something like Dodongo's Cavern, it's fun to just see how the different rooms intersect and come back around into each other, even if you can't really get like lost or anything. The dungeon item, the switch hook, continues both of these trends. There are some fun puzzles based around how this mechanism works, which is by switching the player with the object it links onto, as well as some more action-based moments like using it to get over those lava-filled rooms. I also really love the bosses in here. The mini-boss, the Armos warrior, has a magical sword that flies around the room, and the warrior itself is invulnerable to our attacks due to its large shield. The only way to damage it is to get the large sword that's flying around to come flying towards us. But then we gotta dodge it so it hits the Armos warrior and eventually, shatters its shield, which is pretty neat. Then it goes nuts and starts barreling towards us, but now it's vulnerable to our attacks, so we're able to get a few hits in and take it out. The final boss is apparently called Eyesore, but come on, that's a Patra right there. Apparently in the Japanese version they do share a similar name, so I think it's fair to say that's Patra. Like Patra, it's a flying eyeball with smaller flying balls around it, and in this case, instead of destroying the outer perimeter though, the true way to defeat it is by using the switch hook to pull it from its formation with the orbiting eyes, and then attacking that center part. It's a fun use of the dungeon item, and it's still a nice bit of an action-based, boss. It's pretty fun. I do enjoy fighting this Patra, Eyesore, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, fun boss. And then we can nab the next essence of time, which is the Burning Flame. It reignites wavering hearts with a hero's burning passion. Yeah, I guess that's pretty fitting for the lava-based dungeon here inside a volcano, eh? Yeah, it's a pretty solid dungeon. It's, like I said, straightforward, not more action, or more like room-to-room based, more set-piece based, I guess. And I think this is a good example of a good linear dungeon. How high would I rank it though? That's the question. I even got to think about how I would rank it between the dungeons we've had so far in Oracle of Ages. I feel like it's more like dynamic in its action actually than Moonlit Grotto, I guess. It kind of feels like I don't know actually. I do feel like it's more dynamic in that regard, but I do think Moonlit Grotto, I don't know, Moonlit Grotto is pretty good though. With the overall puzzle of the roundabouts, I think that deserves a lot of props for that. It does, maybe because there was a lot more of the Wing Dungeon was where those like color-based puzzles were introduced. I thought that was pretty neat. There's more bits of like non-linearity in that, but I think this exceeds it. I think this exceeds it in the scale, and I think it ups the action and puzzles a little bit more. It continues. I don't think the minecart nature of this dungeon is more advanced than like the minecarts in Wing Dungeon actually, because you really have a lot of choices. It's more like find the key or whatever you need to progress to the next, change the minecart to get it going to the next area. It's definitely a good step forward in terms of scope in the game, and it's good, just because it's not as like non-linear, doesn't mean that's a bad thing. I think this is a good example of how to weave that into the game. But I do think, I think that's where I'll go with it within the game. Is I think the Moonlit Grotto puzzle aspect, even though it's not that complicated, really neat, really unique. But then I think, this could probably go above Wing Dungeon. Yeah, okay, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking about it, and I feel okay with that. I think above Wing Dungeon, below Moonlit Grotto, but probably not by much, probably not much below it, because I think it is really exciting and fun dungeon. So let's transpose that onto the overall list. Now, we know I actually have a soft spot for Misery Mire. And I actually think I would want to put it below that. But you know what? I actually think I'd put it over Ganon's Castle, thinking about it. I talked about that being kind of its own roller coaster ride and stuff like that, but it does have a lot of things that leave it to be desired, I guess I would say. So with that, I think I'm confident. Yeah, having it in the top 20 is pretty nice. So I think I would keep it there. That seems nice to me. Yeah, that's a good spot. So there we've edged out. Now we have edged out Swamp Palace and Palace of Darkness, which is pretty unfortunate. I think they're fine for now where they are. Because I don't really want to bump out Key Cavern either. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna stick with it for now. I'll revisit this a little bit later. Then we'll see. Maybe before the ending. But yeah, overall, this was a really fun dungeon. Didn't quite, I was just like playing it and I was like, oh, this is nice, this is fun, but it wasn't like, totally mind-blowing or anything. But overall, a solid, straightforward, fun dungeon. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see where else this game will take us. We're now in the bottom half of the dungeons, the last 4 or 5, I guess, depending on what you want to count. So yeah, should be pretty exciting to see what's next.